Hi everyone, I am Anonymous Traveler. Today, I will talk about the pain and the misery of life and how to deal with it in the context of spiritual alchemy. Some pain is physical and some are mental, and today I will focus on mental pain. I will explain this magical water of suffering and how to use it. On a material level, alchemy is a process which turns common material into pure gold. But as we know, it is just an allegory to hide its true meaning. True alchemy is a process which uses common and the vulgar spiritual element to complete the great work. Then you might wonder, what is the most common spiritual element in our life? They are more than few, but those things can be roughly summarized into two elements, which are pleasure and pain. The basic matrix of our manifested world is the water of becoming, which is the primordial substance which Creator God used to create this particular universe. But He is not the only one. There are countless other universes, and all of those universes are occupied by these creators, i.e., the second-class gods. This primordial substance is the seed of all the manifested things in the world, and it contains all kinds of possible manifestation. This basic matrix of our manifested world can entice us with its pleasure, but at the same time, it can crush us with its suffering and anguish. However, in a grand scale of things, they are same. They are different sides of the same coin. Pleasure distracts us from living a truly meaningful life. Suffering crushes and destroys our spirit and makes us giving up a truly meaningful life. So, Creator God uses these two seemingly different tools to prevent anybody from escaping this cosmic jail. Creator God and his agent are what the ancient Gnostics called the evil ones, and what the Buddha called Mara, who are hell-bent on preventing anybody from finding true spiritual freedom. They cannot just let someone escape from this cosmic jail because they feed on our psychic energy. So, for a spiritual seeker, it is very important to maintain a balance in the face of pleasure and pain. You don't want to lose your way in pleasure, and you don't want to get crushed under the weight of suffering. However, what we need to realize is just how common these things called pleasure and pain are in our life. They are inseparable part of our existence and our communal reality. That's because those are the fundamental characteristics of the primordial water of the Creator God, which became the basic matrix of our manifested universe. And regarding the pain, more common one is mental pain. We only get physical pain when we are sick, but when it comes to mental pain, suffering, and anguish, we can feel them whether we are sick or healthy. So, this mental suffering is so common, yet we are not taking advantage of the situation. Based on the principle of alchemy, we can use this mental suffering, process it, and turn it into spiritual gold. However, I have to make one thing clear, that for this purpose, what we need is mental suffering, not physical suffering. Physical pain is not good for this purpose, and I will explain why that is the case later in this lecture. As we all know, life offers endless possibilities of suffering and misery, and each person has a different coping mechanism when it comes to suffering. However, the most popular coping mechanism is distraction method. That is what most people go for. They are usually trying to avoid pain and misery by indulging in something else, such as alcohol, sex, shopping, gambling, etc. However, for us who are interested in the art of spiritual alchemy, more advanced methods are available. Generally speaking, those advanced methods can be roughly categorized into two, which are first, separation, and the second, fermentation. Our mind is like a circuit board with printed pathways on the surface. Separation is like you are reducing the momentum of electric signal on the circuit board. In other words, you are breaking apart this pain signal, and therefore such electrical signal lost its power to act. This is a great tool to handle moderate amount of physical pain. But there is a limit on how much physical pain signal you can process by separation. Unlike a fermentation process, separation requires active participation of the observer every single time whenever pain signal comes. So there is a limit of its effectiveness. Also, physical pain signal cannot be effectively handled with the fermentation process. So, as long as we have a physical body, we cannot avoid physical pain. When you have developed the skill of separation greatly, you can reduce significant amount of physical pain. However, there is a limit. The Buddha was the greatest master when it comes to separation method. Whenever necessary, he handled his physical illness with this method effectively. However, during the later period of his life, the pain signal was getting too frequent, and even the Buddha suffered a great deal because of the sheer frequency of physical pain signal. So, even with the greatest level of separation skill, one cannot completely remove the physical pain. But fermentation is not trying to break apart and eliminate the signal of pain. Fermentation is like you are creating a deviation on the circuit board pathway itself. So, instead of depression or despair, you are getting charged with spiritual power and motivation. In other words, you are rewiring your mind to feel power and motivation when you are getting all the signals of mental suffering and anguish. That kind of rewiring is mental fermentation, and it is a very special kind of a mental deviation. However, this process is not really for physical pain. Our physical body is from the Creator God. Our inner divine fire is from the God of a manifestation, who is the Supreme One and never got involved with any of this creation process. We can cultivate our spirit and our inner divine fire to its fullest. However, no matter how hard we try, our physical body cannot avoid deterioration, pain, and death. That is because our body came from the second-class God who created this world. So this kind of a rewiring process for suffering works for mental suffering related to our spirit, but it does not really work for physical pain. So, I'm going to discuss today on this fermentation method using the magical water of suffering. Or, you can say rewiring the pathway on our mental circuit board in terms of processing mental suffering. But first, let me briefly summarize the first method, separation. Separation is a process where you try to separate the sensation of pain and suffering from yourself by the power of observation and insight. It is frequently used by the Buddhist meditators. It is basically putting yourself in the position of an observer or scientist, and you are observing the rising and the falling of the phenomenon. So the practitioner is gradually losing the habit of identifying oneself with fluctuations of energy, i.e., phenomena. All the phenomena is basically energy fluctuation. With this process, you can also observe pain and suffering as a process of rising and falling. So, by wise observation, you are separating pain and suffering from yourself. Then, what is a fermentation method to deal with mental pain and suffering? Fermentation is a process where you change the characteristics of a substance of your choice. Mental suffering and anguish are powerful energy, and one can use it for mental fermentation. It is like using a common material to make gold, and turning common material into gold is the essence of a spiritual alchemy. Instead of separating mental pain and suffering from oneself, this method is trying to transform the energy of pain and suffering into the energy of vitality and inspiration. And as we know, that's not our normal reaction. Basically, we are trying to create the deviation where we are rewiring and reprinting the pathway on our mental circuit board, and therefore we can transform the mental suffering and the anguish into mental power, vitality, and motivation. So, let me explain the technique. First, you need to create this magical water of mental suffering. You put some water into a jar or whatever container of your choice. Fancy container does not make magic, so use whatever container of your choice. Then, whenever you experience mental suffering and anguish, grab that container and project all those painful energy into the water in the container. Squeeze that mental suffering hard and let its painful essence going through this water of suffering. Use this method whenever you experience mental suffering and anguish. With repeated use, the water will be charged with the essence of mental suffering. Then, for the fermentation process, prepare the bath. You can do regular bath or bubble bath. Bubble bath can be easier for visualization process, but you can experiment with both and choose the best one for you. Then get into the bathtub and drop some of the water of mental suffering you have been accumulated and charged. You don't need a large amount. A couple of water drops can do its job just fine. It's not about quantity, but about quality. Then you start visualization. You are visualizing the water bubbles are filled with the essence of mental suffering. If you don't use bubble bath, then just visualize the water is turning into alchemical water of suffering. Feel this negative energy of the water of suffering. This is one of the key characteristics of the Creator God's magical water of creation. Now, slowly bring up the inner divine spark within you. Visualize it coming up from the root chakra. Visualize its powerful light filling up your entire body. Now, visualize your skin turning into this organ of fermentation. Charge your skin with inner divine spark from the God of a manifestation. Now, you are absorbing the moisture from the water of suffering, and through your skin, which has been charged with inner divine spark, you are transforming the mental suffering aspect of the water into the source of power, energy, and motivation. In my previous video, I already discussed on how to create a hexagram sigil symbolizing the great work. I said that downward triangle is the Creator God's gravity and upside triangle is the power of the divine spark within you. So you are penetrating and conquering the Creator God's essence, which is the ultimate goal of the spiritual alchemy. Now, with today's technique, you are turning your inner mental circuit board into the organ of fermentation or deviation. While absorbing the moisture of mental suffering, you are turning it into the power and motivation. Going through this process until you can feel the power within you is activated. When it's working, you can feel its effect immediately. It feels like you have been baptized in the water of pure power. That's what it feels like. So, after you achieve this, finish the bath. And you can do this as much as you want. The more you practice, the better the outcome. But if it's too much to handle, then I would suggest to practice my hexagram sigil creation technique first. it is much easier. And then, when you are ready, try this technique again, and you will find it much easier. Thanks for listening, and all the best.